And we bring you one more candidate for Councilor at Large. We'd like to welcome Andrew Kenneally. Thank you very much for being with us, Andrew.
Thanks, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your background, because you're not exactly a stranger to working in government.
Well, Chris, I'm a lifelong Bostonian. I grew up in West Roxbury, born and raised, and now I'm a homeowner in East Boston, where I've lived for the past 4 years.
Now, what I heard about you is that you left government for a while, and now you're coming back. What accounts for that?
Sure. Well, I've worked for over 10 years in government. Obviously, as you know, we've worked together on the City Council. I've started off down in Washington, D.C., working for the great Joe Moakley. He was down there for about 4 years, learning the ins and outs of the federal government. Then traveled to Northern Ireland, where I got a master's in ethnic conflict and also studied, as a peace monitor. And then I came back to Boston to work as an aide to two Boston City Councilors, first Maura Hennigan, then Michael Flaherty. But you're right, I did leave to enter the private sector for a while. Unfortunately, 3 months into the job, I was diagnosed with a benign brain tumor. And it was at that time, sitting in a hospital room, that I contemplated my life and was thinking about where I was going, as well as those things I've always wanted to do. And running for office has always been my passion, helping people. And so when I learned there was going to be 2 openings, I decided to throw my name into the hat.
So how would you help people as a counselor?
Well, I've done every aspect of the job. I've served as both the chief of staff and as a policy director. So obviously, as a policy director, my job is to look around the country and try to find best practices that we could apply here at home. So from finding new ideas in terms of how to deal with snow removal or fix potholes, or even how we can better manage our resources in city government. Those were some of the ways I would do it. But I've also done really tangible, concrete things. I've helped to pass legislation to take more of guns off the street. One of the things that I'm most proud of was actually helping to pass a Metz law, which, as you know, Met St. Guillen, who was brutally raped and murdered up in New York City, we passed legislation here so that no other person would have to suffer those same kind of circumstances.
In that case, it was a bouncer who was found guilty, and we want to make sure that bouncers here are screened.
That's correct. And so that's one of the many pieces of legislation that I helped to pass that makes me feel good. I mean, that's part of the reason I love public services, is actually impact people's lives, whether it's passing legislation like that or whether it's getting a street light or a pothole fixed. It's really, for me, where the rubber meets the road in terms of government, helping people.
Well, if you had a chance to make a difference in the council, what would you want to do to change the way things are in the city right now?
Sure. Well, I think one of my biggest priorities right now would be to get Boston moving again. We're looking at the highest unemployment rate in decades. There's not a day that goes by that I don't talk to a friend or a family member who has either lost their job or is in danger of losing their job. And so my main focus is to really get our city moving, and that means stimulating development in our city. There's a number of projects, as you well know, around the city. One only has to go down to Downtown Crossing to see a big hole in the ground. I want to provide the financing, and I applaud the mayor for setting up a loan fund so we can jumpstart those projects, get those guys back to work down there, which is going to create a local economic stimulus for little coffee shops and eateries. But it's also going to, bring new value onto the tax rolls. A hole in the ground is not taxable revenue. It's only until that building is built that we're going to receive the revenue we need to provide for city services and avoid a lot of layoffs.
Now, it sounds like a great goal, but
sure.
The mayor hasn't been able to do much about it so far. The BRA hasn't, nor the people who are on the city council right now. So what can you do that
Well, actually, one project has already done well as a result of the financing, and so it's moving forward. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. Stimulating development is one. Making sure that we're focusing job training resources. This is a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. I think we need to take this time when so many people are unemployed and make sure they're getting the training for the jobs of tomorrow, be it life sciences, be it green manufacturing. I also think that we need to make sure that the city is tightening its own belt, investing in new technologies that are going to save us money and make service delivery more cost efficient. And lastly, I think we need to make sure that colleges and universities and other tax-exempt institutions are paying their fair share. As we discussed before, I think the show came on, Boston University is doing a great job, paying millions of dollars, but not every university, not every tax-exempt institution is doing their fair share. And so I think it's not just one thing, it's a number of things, 4 points for me in terms of how we got to get the city moving.
Talk about...
And I've done the work, and that's the thing about it. That's the difference. I'm not just talking about it. I've got a record of accomplishment over 10 years of getting things done.
Cutting the budget in some ways to get the most out of the bucks talk about school transportation, because I think candidates for mayor
Sure.
seem to be struggling with this.
Sure. Well, it's pretty easy for me. I mean, I think one of the most important ingredients in a child's performance is parental involvement. So the question is, how do we do better with that? How do we increase that? Well, number one, I think we got to give parents the ability to send their child to the school closest to their home. Not only is that going to allow the child to, allow the parent to get more involved in the school, but it's also going to allow us to take the over $70 million that we currently spend on school transportation costs and return that to the school. I talk to teachers every day. My mom is a nurse in the Boston Public Schools at the Haley and the Agassiz, and what I hear from them is not a question of whether reorganizing the school, it's a question of resources. The city of Boston, the Boston Public Schools, we handle every single kid that comes to us. Some are very smart and do very well, and some of them have great problems, but we take everybody, and I think they're doing a great job, but they need more resources.
What about the people who feel that they might be bunched up into a zone with more underperforming schools?
Well, I think that's why I want to take that over $70 million and particularly put that into the schools that are underperforming. I think they need the resources the most because they're dealing with a lot of socioeconomic factors that require more resources. Whether that means more teachers, whether that means smaller class sizes, maybe that needs a special attention for a particular child or some more after-school programs. But I think continuing to do what we do, we've been doing the same program for the last 2 decades. We have to try something new.
What's also coming up is a possible new source of revenue in the city, multiple new sources if the governor and the state legislature come to agreement here, and it looks as if they are. So there could be increases in restaurant, hotel taxes,
Right.
telecommunications. Should we have those, given that some people are also saying if you increase taxes,
Sure.
that slows down the economic recovery?
Sure. Well, I would go with the latter on that. I believe before we even start to look at raising taxes or even cutting services, we go back to my 4 points in terms of how we can get Boston moving. I think there's a lot of things we need to do in terms of stimulating business, as well as making our present government services more efficient. And I think we got to start there before we even look to burden businesses out there who are already struggling. Everyone's struggling out there right now, and I think it's the wrong time to burden them further.
You've drawn attention to a couple of endorsements, labor endorsements, IBEW, and also the largest ASME union in
Sure.
Boston. So what does that mean to voters in general? What does that mean about you?
Well, number one, for those unions, it means that I'm a friend and I'm an ally to working families. I know what it's like to be a hard worker. I come from I'm the youngest of 5 kids from a hardworking middle-class family in West Roxbury. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I've worked hard for everything that I've received, and I've worked hard to educate myself and make myself the best I can be. They're supporting me because they know I have their best interests at heart. I'm fighting for the little guy. I'm fighting for the working guy, and that's why they're putting their support behind me. And they also believe I have the vision and the know-how and the experience and the knowledge to make our city greater.
You mentioned more details on your website.
Sure. The website is www.andy09.com.
All right, thank you very much for being
Thanks,
with us.
Chris.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Andrew Kenneally, candidate at large for Boston City Council. And that's our news for tonight. I'm Chris Lovett. Thanks for being with us.